Today, I want to talk about the movie All That Jazz from 1979. It's directed by Bob Fosse. It's a musical, drama, comedy, fantasy. It mixes so many elements to create an incredible film. All That Jazz is the story of Joe Gideon. He is a theater director and choreographer who has recently gone on to edit a Hollywood movie. And this movie is about him trying to balance his new Broadway show and his edit of the stand-up. In this, we see a lot of his bad tendencies, such as being a womanizer, a chain smoker, but you also get to see his dedication to his art, all culminating into disaster. And that's why I think this is one of the most personal musicals I've ever seen. Musicals, you really think of something huge, something big, but All That Jazz is a character study and a musical. And the way it's handled, the look of it is amazing. It has its highs, it has its lows. All That Jazz is an absolutely incredible movie. It is remembered by many, but I don't think enough people have seen it. I do think this movie works well on its own, but I think its background context really adds so much to this movie. And to get that background context, you have to look at the director, Bob Fosse. Now, Bob Fosse is one of the great directors who unfortunately has a very small library because of his untimely death. He only worked on 5 movies, his first one being 1969's Sweet Charity, and then 1972 was his big breakthrough with Cabaret starring Liza Minnelli, which is considered one of the greatest movies. He then directed Lenny, which led him into All That Jazz. And Lenny is the movie that we need to look at most in his career. Lenny, which was released about 5 years earlier, is the story of real-life comedian Lenny Bruce, and it stars Dustin Hoffman as the titular character. Supposedly, this movie was absolute hell for Bob Fosse to make in the editing process. He kept going back and forth between different projects, and he just couldn't get this movie right. And it actually led him to having a heart attack and really thinking about his life. And that is what All That Jazz is. It's Bob Fosse's story as told through Joe Gideon. And that's why All That Jazz is such a personal and raw experience. It's Bob Fosse looking at himself in the mirror and translating the pain that came from being a workaholic and almost brought him near death through the production of art. Just from its opening sequence, we learn so much about this character with a minimal amount of dialogue, and it's brilliant. It's all done to this really nice song, and you get to see all these auditions for theater. In this, you get to see Joe Gideon talk to each woman and really be a womanizer and kind of pick his favorites based on looks. And he's very easy to discourage. He can look at somebody, he doesn't like them, he can easily just be like, no, I don't want them. It's not a hard deal for him. You also get the beginning of a pace that really starts from here to the end of the movie. And that's him getting up, taking a shower, and just going through this laborious morning process just to look at himself in the mirror and say, it's showtime. And this continues as a beat throughout the rest of the movie. And as you go further and further along, you see his health slowly declining. This whole sequence is very grounded, and it gets you settled into this movie, into his life, his estranged wife and child. It gets you ready. And you soon see him in the editing room, and you know he loves this movie he's made called The Stand-Up, but he just can't get it right. He's editing it over and over again over the years, and just doesn't feel good to him. And this is just exactly like Fosse with his production of Lenny. And I'm sure the pains of that really bleeds through Joe Gideon here. And from here on out, it just starts to get more and more depressing. And there's a lot of talk about the stages of death, and you see him go through this because he does eventually get so sick that he goes to the hospital, and he tries profusely to work and work and work because he can't let go of his art. He knows if he dies or if he stays in the hospital too long, his production is going to be handed off to somebody else. You just can't see that happen. Joe Gideon is pushing people away and he's pulling people in. You never can quite decide what he wants to do because he's so scared of death and the loss of everything. And it's just so beautiful. That's the correct word. It's beautiful. There's nothing I love more than a real depiction of a human character in film. And what I mean by that is this character, Joe Gideon, feels human. He feels believable. He feels like me. He feels like you. He's very universal. Sometimes you go to a movie and you get a character that's all good, right? He's the best person in the world. He can only do good. Or you get the polar opposite of that. You get the villain, the evil villain that just is against everything. But in all that jazz, Joe Gideon is displayed as somebody with positives and negatives. At times you want to hate him for the way he treats women, but at other times you want to admire him for his power and audacity in making his art. No human is perfect, and Bob Fosse knew that when he looked at himself in the mirror. And we get that here. All that jazz is a look in the mirror of the director, and it's the purest example of somebody's self-reflection on film. But I think the most brilliant thing that they did in this movie was on his deathbed, Joe Gideon gets his own musical at the end of this movie. And the last 30 minutes of this film are incredible. And I think it is totally worth watching just to see this final musical number. It goes from an almost grounded character piece into brilliant musical fantasy. Joe Gideon is laughing and dancing and singing, and it's so avant-garde because there are multiple of Joe Gideon. Joe Gideon plays the director of the musical, which I'm going to guess is an even more grounded version of Bob Fosse in this film. And let me tell you, Roy Scheider, who is cast, almost, I would say, miscast in this role, he does an amazing job. You know, it's one of those times where an actor really plays against type, and it works so well. Roy Scheider, who's mostly known for Jaws and The French Connection, here he plays a musical man. He is somebody in show business, very bright and colorful. And God, he's so good in it, especially in these last 30 minutes. The way he shines and smiles and dances and sings, it's just top-notch stuff, and it's probably the best moments of his career. I think all of this mixed with some of the best editing in a film that I've ever seen. The way this is cut to music is just excellent, and the look of it is beautiful. I think All That Jazz is one of the greatest movies, and I really recommend this one, especially deep diving into it. I think you get to see a lot of what makes this an amazing film. Not only that, I think even without all the background context, I think it's just a great study, character piece on just a really human character and how we all have flaws and we have our issues, but we still have our good moments. And Joe Gideon here is a hard character to like, but his determination and the art that he does bring is beautiful. And I think that's something that we all can appreciate, is a beautiful piece of art. And I think that wraps it up for All That Jazz. Thank you for watching my review. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this, please give a like and subscribe to the channel to see more videos. Also, leave a comment below. I would love to hear from you and have a conversation with you. But we'll see you here next time.